All right. Hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mike, Play Fast Football. Time for our weekly live chat. Glad some of you guys could join us tonight on a Wednesday night. Things settling down a little bit. It's been kind of busy, tough to get on live. You've got the NCAA tournament, WrestleMania, a lot of things going on. Tough to get on when people are going to join live with so many other things to watch. But great night to go live. The next 4 days for me are about the best 4 days of the year. The Masters coming up. So I'm a huge Masters guy, huge golf fan. So excited to watch that. Excited to get the next 2 days. If you haven't ever seen the Chris Vernon Masters update, unbelievable stuff. So I wait for that all year. So now that we kind of get through all that, it's that time of year where all eyes start to go to football again. After college basketball ends, and you got the draft coming up, and where the NFL stuff is getting into full swing. Free agency just kind of ended. The combine ended. Now you get into the draft. College football teams are working on their spring ball stuff right now. So you got a bunch of spring ball stuff going on. If you're fortunate enough to be in a state that allows spring practice, you're probably getting ready. If you're not already underway, getting ready for your spring practice. Our spring practice starts in about 2.5 weeks. So we're doing some stuff every Tuesday, Thursday morning. So we got workouts tomorrow morning at 6:15. So, it's that time of year again. Football's rolling in. It's, you go through those couple months where it's down a little bit after the Super Bowl, after the college playoffs, and all you've got is clinics going on. But, we're kind of in that time frame now where it's kicking up. It's ramping up again. It's going full steam ahead. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting back on the field, getting back to practice, working on some things that we needed to fix from last year, trying to put some things together to figure out what our talent is, who we're going to play at what positions, what we're going to do, that things that we really liked last year, things that we got to work on, things that people did to exploit, our base defense. So, for us going into the spring, really exciting time of year. I asked a question the other day on Twitter asking guys about if you're fortunate enough to have spring football, how do you view spring football, right? So a couple different ways you can look at it. Obviously, there's your install phase. You're getting through your base stuff. You're working a lot on techniques, fundamentals. You're doing a lot of drill work. You're trying to get guys better at their craft. Earlier in life, it was Greg Norman. Later on in life, it was Tiger Woods. Currently, I would say of the guys that are playing right now, currently, I really like Victor Hovland's game. I like watching some of the guys that can really go low and, be really excitable on the golf course. So, but I'm always looking for, anytime Tiger tees it up, I'm always looking forward to watching Tiger. So getting into spring ball for us, it's we work on install, we get our base stuff in. Obviously we're a 3-3-5 team. We're not really necessarily a stack team. We're a 3-3 personnel team. We play some tight front, going to switch to some Okie front this year, maybe shade the front a little bit with the 4-eye to the back. We play our 3-high coverage. So that's our base stuff. That's what we've got to get installed first. And then from there, we want to look at, maybe one of our change up fronts to our odd stuff and see how that works out for us. And then, look at a couple different pressure paths, toy around with some things. Maybe, we always in the spring for me it's a time to work some man coverage deals. We need to improve in our man coverage. We're not a man coverage team, but at some point, every defense is going to have to play man coverage. So we're always working on improving man stuff. I love to use the spring to improve man stuff. I think the spring's a great time to work on, the fundamentals of tackling, becoming better tacklers. So all the different tackling drills that you can do in the spring, slow things down a little bit. We have a game at the end of 3.5 weeks, but, it's good to play a game, but the results really don't necessarily mean anything. You want to play well. You want to get some confidence going into the summer. But, to me, it's more about figuring out players, figuring out personnel. Do we have guys in the right positions? Is there anybody that's going to surprise us? Is there anybody that had a great offseason? We made a couple moves in the secondary. We moved some corners to safety. So as kids get older and a little bit bigger, maybe they start as corners, but as they lift a little bit and grow, and they're physical enough to be in the run game, we can move them, to safety. And then we start, trying to develop our younger corners. Really looking at optimizing our JV stuff that we're doing. We added some coaches to the staff, trying to almost get a separate JV staff so that we can, spend a little bit more time where we need to spend time. I think it's really important to develop JV. When I was a head coach for 20 something years, it was really important to me that we had the same guys coaching JV and varsity. I wanted those JV guys getting coached by the same coaches that were coaching varsity, the same position coaches. I wanted those position coaches to get a chance to see the younger kids. That's our future, right? Those are the kids we got to develop. So we had a staff meeting about 3 weeks ago. We visited Coastal Carolina and sat in on their meetings, and then we watched them practice. And we went up about a day early before the college meetings with their staff, and we had our own staff meeting. So, talked about ways we can optimize our program, talked about ways we can get better, evaluating young talent, finding guys earlier, finding guys that we can count on, finding a work ethic that we need, finding guys that match, the values of our program and that can live up to the expectations of our program. Really, making a push with assistant coaches to try and identify those guys early. I think sometimes you get in a rut with JV where you're just trying to survive a little bit. And one of the things that we discussed at the meeting was we got to do a better job evaluating these kids earlier, figuring out the kids that have the frames that we can work on, the kids that, again, have the work ethic, the discipline, the desire to be there, the kids that show up at practice every day, kind of identify them earlier and start figuring out, what the future is going to be. Because if you're a 9 through 12 school, every year you're turning over seniors, that, 9, 10, 11th grade class, that's your future. That's your farm system. So, we talked a little bit about how we can develop that a little bit better and identify our talent a little bit earlier. So, springtime's always exciting, getting back on the field. If you don't have spring football, then, obviously you're probably doing some 7-on-7 stuff, or, you're still working on stuff as a coach. You're working on your playbook stuff. You're working on, your installs. You're working on maybe things you need to defend. If you know what your schedule is, maybe you're watching some film. So, it's that time of year to me, I always look at it right around the Masters. As soon as the Masters is over, then we're kind of almost revving up to full-time football, because we have spring football. As soon as that's over, the kids get about 10 days off, and then we're back first week of June in the weight room for summer stuff. So, it's kind of that calendar that you have as a coach. If you've done it pretty much your entire life, or if you've played football and then gone into coaching, you kind of understand the calendar, the downtime, and then, when everything starts to get back into, full swing. And, when you are, when you're getting ready to amp things up. So excited about that. Pumped out a couple of videos this week. I did one this morning on offensively, which I wanted to, if there were some offensive guys on here tonight. We always talk defense because I'm a defensive coordinator now, and I don't call offense anymore. So obviously I'm a little bit more tuned into defensive stuff, but still like talking offense. I played offense in college, started my career as an offensive coach. So still like talking offense, seeing what's out there, seeing what everybody likes, and did a video today on spacing concepts, 4 strong out of 3x1, and, working on, some stuff off a snag corner flat, and, taking that from there and then getting, kind of to your stick or your mini curl concepts and how you can adjust some of those things. And, one of the reasons that I did the video, not only did I want to talk some offensive stuff, but when we're throwing against our guys now, we are seeing a lot of spacing concepts. And when we're playing our palms, our pattern match stuff, and technically if 2 doesn't go to the flat, we only have 2 underneath defenders, and they're running a lot of snag and spot and flare and pushing the back out and putting 3 on 2 underneath. And, we don't have a ton of adjustments in right now in our early spring stuff. So, so it's one of those deals where you get a chance to talk to your guys. I get a chance to talk to my players on defense about, hey, guys, you see the routes are running, the combinations that give us trouble. Here's why. Technically, based on how we match this route distribution, when they run those patterns, we only have 2 underneath defenders. So we start talking about coverages that the kids that are older, coverages they played the year before, some of our 3 deep stuff, some of our combination man stuff, some of our Tampa 2 stuff. And we start talking about how we can build answers, right? So even though we don't have those things yet, we haven't had a ton of install yet. We haven't had a ton of meetings yet. So, we're still in the early phase of it. But you get a chance when you're throwing against your offense, you get a chance to talk to your guys about, hey, all right, so do you see where they're starting to attack us in this coverage, right? Every coverage has coverage beaters. Talk to your guys about where you might be a little bit weak in coverage. And you talk about, you talk to your guys about the throws that in that coverage you may be willing to give up. And then making sure you can rally and tag off and make sure you have bodies there so those underneath throws aren't, big explosive plays. And then while that's going on, while the offense is, getting ready to run their next deal, I'm talking to our guys about, hey, guys, this is why we carry some of our other deals. We don't have any of it in yet, but when we get to it, here's how we can match some of that stuff. And, here's how we can take away some of the things that they're doing. And, so when I did the video today, I was talking about spacing stuff. And, basically, if you go back to kind of the evolution of the passing game 40, 50, 60 years ago, like Sid Gilman stuff, and, when guys really started evolving in the forward pass concept, defense, there's 6 underneath zones. Technically, if you split the field right down the middle from the goalpost, there's a hook on each side of the ball, there's a hook, or on each side of the goalpost, you've got a hook zone, a curl zone, a flat zone. So there's 6 underneath zones. So essentially, if the offense is able to put more players in the underneath zones than the defense can cover, they should be able to complete passes, right? So on defense, we got to teach guys how to be hook curl defenders, curl flat defenders. But, the bottom line is if you have 2 underneath players and they're putting 3 underneath routes, you're probably going to have to rally and tackle some of those. You're going to give up some completion. So, looking at spacing deals, and I think guys should carry way more spacing concepts in their offense. I think a lot of high school quarterbacks can make those throws. I think a lot of high school quarterbacks can read those deals out. I don't think it takes great protection to keep the quarterback upright enough to be able to complete those passes. And, it really forces the defense's, hand to where when you start getting somebody that is disciplined enough and willing to throw those completions underneath, eventually you've got to change coverage, right? You've got to adapt what they're doing. And then when you change coverage, obviously you're going to get into other issues, right? So one of the things I talked about in the video today was, every coverage has a beater. Every concept has, something that defeats another concept, right? So when we play Palms, they've got things they can do to give Palms issues. When we change the coverage, we're protecting the things that they're doing. But every time we change the coverage, they now have a concept that can beat that coverage, right? So it's the cat and mouse game of disguising coverages, being able to play different coverages, being able to play things from similar looks and being able to spin and rotate. The just did a podcast that came out today, I believe, the Board Drill podcast. Kyle and Matt do a good job with that. So recorded that last week, and we talked about 3 high and why we like 3 high. And, one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of the 3 high stuff is it makes it tougher on the quarterback and it makes it tougher on the offensive coordinator. And one of the things that, I talked about on the podcast and in the video I did yesterday, or maybe last week, I talked about how at the stops that I've been at, most of the times getting off the bus, we are not the better team. So, when you get off the bus and you're not the more talented team, you're going to have to do some things that are a little bit different. You're going to have to do some things that, are a little bit challenging for the other team, right? I've got to challenge that offensive coordinator. I got to challenge that quarterback, and I got to challenge that O-line. I really don't have a choice in most of the games we play because we're not just going to put a hand down and be better than other people. There's weeks when we are, and that's fine. We just need to play good football. But the weeks that we're not more talented, or the weeks when the talent is even, now you've got to do things to stress out the coordinator. You've got to do things to stress the quarterback and to stress the O-line. And a lot of that comes down to, not only the game planning, but it comes down to the things that you're doing in previous weeks. Trying to get things on film that makes guys, prepare. So carrying, at least 3 fronts, right? So carrying for us, it was tight, over, mint. And mint and a tight become very similar, but we blitz and move our way into bear stuff. So, when you carry a couple different fronts, now they got to prepare for that, right? So they can't just rep out, excuse me, everything that they want to do to tight. They've got to have their run game to tight, their run game to over, maybe their run game to double eagle stuff. Then you throw your blitzes and your movements and your pressures in there. And now they've got to work on, run game versus those movements and pressures. Then they got to work on pass protection and then all your coverage variations. So, to me, that's always part of the coordinator deal is, without exposing my kids and playing, bad football, I want to carry as many things as I can. And I want to show as many things as I can. And I want to make the other team have to prepare for those things. And they need to do their homework and see how often we play certain things, and they need to do their homework and understand what they should be preparing for, more than other things. But, at the end of the day, I want them to have to prepare for certain things. I want to have answers. Um, I want to play good football. I don't want to do so much that we do nothing well. I learned that lesson when I was a young coach. As an offensive coach, we tried to run everything under the sun, and we weren't good at anything. And that's no good either, right? So I'm not running things just to run them, but part of the life of a coordinator and part of the job of a coordinator is understanding how you can affect the offense, how you can impact their weekly schedule of practice. How can you impact how they prepare? Because that's putting your kids in an advantageous position, not letting them rep tight all week long. You have other answers that they have to work on, not letting them see one or two blitz patterns. You have multiple paths or multiple coverages behind the pass that you need to make them work on, right? So, you're impacting another team with the stuff that you're running in previous weeks, right? And then as a coach, you've got to do your self-scout. You've got to be aware of the things you're running. You got to be aware of your tendencies. You got to be aware of the pass or the blitz pass that you use. You got to be aware of the coverages that you are living in, especially in previous weeks. And you got to understand. I like to break it down even more into like first series or first drives. I like to know what I've opened in. I try not to open in the same thing every week. I try to change up my openers. I try to change up how aggressive we are, maybe on the first series. Just some things that are kind of messing with what the offensive coordinator is doing and what the other team is doing. So you don't want them to have a beat on what you're doing. You don't want them to come dialed in with an exact plan that says, all right, we know they're going to sit in this, this, and this. Especially if you are in a situation where you're not the more talented team. So those are all things that go into it. So, the spring for us, install techniques, fundamentals, always get better at tackling. Big time for us to work a lot of man stuff and a lot of man drills, and always carry at least one man coverage deal in the spring because we need to rep that out. But also building that overall composite of, what things do we like, what things do we try and we throw out. So when we go into the season, we kind of know what that overall composite looks like and the things that we know we have to call, the things that we know we have to do. Sometimes the spring, if you struggle in an area, that might be a good time for you to set aside time in practice. So maybe short yardage on offense and defense. If that was an issue the year before, then you want to set time aside in the spring to do some short yardage work against each other or however you want to do it, whatever way. Joe, we actually use a professional system. We use, what is the name of it? CI something. We CI. I want to say CIA, but I that sounds too government like for me. But we actually have a book. Every week we have to enter data into the book. We have to enter defensive data, offensive data. We have to enter what the forecast for the weather is. We have to enter special teams data, how good we think our kicker is, how good we think their kicker is, and then what the system does is it. For each week, it kind of prints out a book for you where kind of tells you the game plan, things you should be doing, possibly when you might use your timeouts, when you should go for it, when you're in 4-down territory. So we are using analytics probably as much, if not more so than a lot of people out there. That's the way my head coach thinks. That's the way his brain works. So I'm more of a feel guy. I like to kind of coach things as they happen. I like to go with gut feeling, emotion of the game, how we're playing, how they're playing, how our offense is playing, how their defense is playing. The analytics are good going in. It's all guesswork off of film stuff, right? So I'm looking at another team and I'm telling my coach, all right, I think we're going to hold them to 21 this week or, whatever. And he says, all right, I think we're going to score 21. And then we rate the kickers in the kicking game. And then that book comes out and says, all right, even from a tempo deal, it'll give you a tempo world where it'll come out and say, hey, this is a good game to really push the tempo. Or it'll come out and say, hey, the script doesn't match pushing the tempo. I think you should take the air out of the ball. So, it's really interesting stuff. Just another tool out there to help coaches use it for what it's worth. And, I think you can go overboard with it. Certainly, I think you can get lost in the sauce sometimes. Like we actually assign one or two coaches to the book and they have it up in the booth and they're relaying information down to the head coach. So I think all that stuff is good. Obviously, just like film stuff, replay stuff, access to iPads and stuff on the sideline, right? The evolution of technology and all the things that you can use to help your players. But I think you got to draw, just like anything else, I think you got to draw kind of a fine line between how much of it helps and how much of it hurts. And we still got to coach the emotion of the game. We still have to coach the ebbs and flows of the game. And, some of those games on paper analytically, if something happens early and that changes the script, well, those analytics kind of go out the window now, right? We've got to learn how to coach on the fly. And I think with experience, you learn how to do that. You always want to try early in games, whatever. I think early in my career, I read a book by Brian Billick about offensive game planning. And when you go into the week, you've got to understand, kind of the pie chart you have set up. What did we practice all week? What percentage runs, what percentage passes? And when you go in, you want to make sure that you are calling the things that you practice that week, and you're calling it in a manner that matches what you practice that week. And, situationally, you're doing the things that you worked on that week so that the kids have a chance, to see things and rep things in practice and then hopefully execute them in the game, right? So what happens with that, though, is that script changes. If you fumble the opening kickoff and get down 7 points or get down 14 points, some of that's going to change, right? If you're up 21-0, some of those things are going to change offensively and defensively. So at some point, human nature has to take over, and you've got to be able to coach the emotion of the game. So I still like doing things kind of gut feeling. I'm trying to use analytics more and more. I'm trying to do a better job of following analytics with breakdowns. And, I coach with some younger guys that kind of grew up in that, in that era, in that time and a place. And so you got to mix some of your old school theories. And, if you've got younger guys on your staff, you got to find a way to relate and get information to those guys on your staff. So, one of the things we talked about at our staff meeting, some of the guys said we got away from Sunday in-person meetings. We did some Zoom stuff with coordinators and then relayed information to the assistant coaches. And, the assistant coaches were talking about being more prepared for the week with the game plan. And, I think to me, that comes down to guys just want to be accountable for their position, and they want to do a good job at their position, right? They want to be prepared. They want to know what's going in. But, I told the guys on the defensive side, as much as I would love to do that, I've never finished a game plan by Sunday. I'm still watching film going into Monday, Tuesday. Things jump out at me that, maybe I didn't notice earlier. After a Friday game, that next Saturday, you've got a lot of things going on where you're trying to put that game behind you. Maybe you're watching some of the things from that game and correcting them. So, to me, I never have a full game plan done in one day. So, I try to explain to those defensive guys, look, I'm going to give you as much information as I can to what I think we're going to do. And, I want it all finalized by Tuesday after practice, right? So there's times where we have things in the game plan and we go out and practice Monday and it looks like crap and we can't do it. And now I've got to, kind of change again. So, those are all things that you're trying to get better with, trying to figure out a way to do things. Because as a coordinator, you got to do things the way you know how to do them. But you have coaches on your staff that are a pivotal part of the success of what's going on. So you got to learn how to relate to those guys, right? You got to learn how to talk to them. You got to learn what they understand, what they don't understand. You got to learn how to do things that, they understand how to do, right? So if you're just an old school guy that does things the way you've always done them, you either need to teach all those guys how you do that, or, you need to be able to use some of those guys for the new age stuff. If you're not used to cutting up film, or you're not used to breaking down huddle stuff, whatever it may be. So that, to me, that's unique to every staff and unique to every coordinator. But, long story short, analytics are a big part of what we do. Technology is a big part of what we do. And, I certainly think it's helped us at times. I don't think we lost any games the last 2 years that we've been using that analytics program. I don't think we've lost any games because of the analytics. I think it's certainly helped us. So it's the other day. How do you alter your blitz pass for the Mike and Will when you call them based on our blitz pass stay the same? So, it's if they're not choice blitzes to formations, if they're just called as our pressure pass, then we're going to run them. The pass are going to stay the same. So we're not really going to alter those. The guys that are blitzing have to be able to get pressure, in the gap that they need to get pressure in from whatever their alignment is. So we work during the week on guys. All right, where if it's 2x2 and this is a 3-1 box and we're sending this pressure, this is what it needs to look like. And then, try to pair those pressures to understand that, you're going to carry other looks too, right? So, we're not always 3-1 box to 2-by-2. We're not always, um, we're not always tight front. So, there's going to be times where you are blitzing from different looks. The way we do it with our blitz families is our guys know who the blitzers are. They know what the path is, and they've got to be able to get to that blitz and that path based on whatever the formation is. So if it's something that makes the will walk out, but he's an A gap blitzer, then obviously he can't walk out as far. The blitz takes priority over the look. We'd like to disguise it as long as possible, but we've got to be able to do some other things too, where we don't just pressure from those looks. So it's one of those deals where it's not always going to look the same as your base stuff. You would like it to look the same, but if we have some pressures where the will is an interior blitzer and it's a 2-by-2 set, he can't walk out there like he would to play palms. When he needs to hit an inside gap. So you'd like to make them all look the same if you could, but we do enough other things in coverage that we're not always 3-1 box to 2-by-2, and we're not always the same look to 11 or 20 personnel. So there's going to be some tendencies there, unfortunately, but you try to stay out on the best you can. But at the end of the day, the path of the pressure takes precedence over the scheme and where it's coming from. So guys got to be able to do a good job. If they're an edge blitzer and there's a look that makes them walk out, then they can come from that position. So kids just need to understand, and coaches need to be able to coach where the path is, where you need to get to, and can you get to it from a look that looks similar to how we would play base defense. We ran it from 10. We ran it from 20. I was running it at a time, there was probably a 6 to 8 year stretch where I never used a tight end. We were only 10 and 20 personnel with a sniffer. And we kind of used the sniffer. We ran it as more of a kick out scheme than we did as a pin scheme. We carried buck sweep when we wanted to pin a 5 technique off a down block. We did it. We ran the duo stuff because it fit in with our gap stuff, and I wanted to carry some 10 personnel read game stuff. So we've done it some unconventional ways. Obviously, the base way is with bigger bodies and tight end sets and compressed sets and pinning everything inside and getting the ball worked out to a corner if you can. So to me, conversations that I've had with people when I've talked about it, duo is a blocking scheme. I mean, yeah, it's a philosophy and it's a theory, but it's also a blocking scheme. It's power without a puller, if you want to look at it that way. So, to me, the word duo is that blocking scheme, and we can use that blocking scheme a lot of different ways. We've run it and we've bluffed a defensive end with a sniffer. We've run it as a split zone play where we've kicked the defensive end. So a lot of different ways you can do it, but the traditional school of thought is bigger bodies, tight end bodies, condensed sets, pinning guys inside, reading off the mic. If the ball bounces, you try and get it out to a corner or a secondary player. So that's the way most people would run it. Only experienced defensive coach at the moment. In a perfect world, he will coach inside linebackers. I will coach outside linebackers in our 3-4 quarters. The other 2 guys are good guys. We'll do it as. It's really tough when you have either a new guy or a rookie on the back end. The back end will get you no problem, Ellen, sorry, Locklear. The back end can get you hurt in a hurry. So for me, I always like to coach the back end when I can. Obviously you got to be good at every position. And if you're green, wet behind the ear, new at some positions, obviously the defense is going to struggle a little bit. But if they're good guys and they do what's asked of them, then I think you need to develop them. My suggestion to you would be, if you're a back end guy, I would move to the back end and I would move one of them to outside backers in the 3-4. I think it's a little bit easier job. And then every offseason, if they're with you, maybe you can progress to where they can move to the back end. But I'm not comfortable with rookies, new guys, or guys that I've never really coached a bunch with coaching the back end by themselves. I need to be back there with them because, the back end is where you can really get hurt in a hurry. You can get hurt at D-line, you can get hurt at linebacker. I'm not saying that they're not important, but if things are screwed up on the back end, you can really get into trouble quickly. So I always feel more comfortable coaching from the back end forward than I do, coaching up front. So, if that was the scenario for me, Colton, I would certainly if I had the ability to. So if you or the other guy, if somebody has the ability to coach the back end, one of the two guys that you think are the experienced guys, I would go to the back end and I would move somebody to inside backer or outside backer. I think you can get away with a lesser coach, a newer coach, a guy with less experience. I think you can get away more with that closer to the ball than you can as you start to get further away from the ball. So that would just be my opinion on that. And hopefully those guys that are good guys and do the things you ask of them, they continue to develop. They stay with the program, and in a couple of years, you can have a really good staff. So that would be my suggestion there for that situation. Any other questions guys have out there? I'll be on for a little bit longer. We've got morning workouts tomorrow, so I've got to be up at 4:45. So I can't stay on that late tonight, but certainly want to address if there's any questions out there, offense, defense, special teams, whatever you got. If I can answer it, I'll certainly answer it. I'm interested. I'm interested to see what's going to be the new trend in offense this year. I think it might be moving back to bigger personnel. To be honest with you, I don't know what geographically where you coach or what you see in your area, but I think you might see a gradual shift back to 21 tight end bodies, 12. Maybe some condensed sets and doing things to kind of combat teams playing five secondary guys. As a base defense, 4-2-5, 3-3-5, whatever it may be. I think that to me is something that I'm really want to keep my eye on is what the changes are and what's new. Obviously, I don't in the off season. I don't go to a bunch of offensive clinics. I'll go when I get a chance, but I've got to concentrate on my side of the ball. So I really haven't got a chance to talk to anybody to see what the buzz was in the offseason, what is out there, what everybody's trying to do. I don't think tempo is going away anytime soon. I think you still got to be able to defend tempo. I don't think the spread world's going away. I think in high school it's still a conducive way for people to score points. But I just feel like for the schools that can do it, I feel like you're going to start seeing a shift back to bigger bodies, 21 personnel. Interesting to see where we are in the world of gaps versus zone. I still think the high school world is gap scheme heavy. I think gap schemes are easier to carry and teach in high school, easier for O linemen to execute. So I would still say that high school is a predominantly gap scheme based. You do see some zone scheme stuff, but I don't see a ton of guys that live in inside zone, wide zone worlds. The guys that do, when they do a good job, obviously it's really difficult to defend when teams are good. And I played some in my career. Teams that get really good at wide zone, and then the action and boot stuff and play action passes off of that just become a real issue. But we don't see it a ton, to be honest with you. We see more, even in the spread world, we see more gap schemes. We see a ton of power, a ton of counter. And then, all your perimeter runs, they tie all their jet action and their bash stuff to those plays like GT bash. And, to me, still, I think one of the best offensive plays in football, if not the best offensive play, if you've got a guy that's really good on the perimeter and you've got two linemen that can pull, if you really want to put the defense in a bind, running GT bash stuff with, action that's going perimeter one side, GT to the other, I think it's a pain. It's really a pain in the neck to fit. And I think you can make life hell on defensive guys. So we've seen it more and more the last couple of years, but thankfully haven't seen it as much as I would think, simply because as an offensive guy, I think it's a great scheme. I think it's really hard to defend. So I want to see where everybody's at in the read game. Offensively, I don't think read game's going away. I don't think the ball handling mechanics of read game are going away. I still think it's beneficial for the offense. So there's still going to be tempo. There's still going to be spread. There's still going to be read game. RPOs aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But I just feel like I've got a gut feeling based off some of the things we saw last year, and based on how many teams out there are now, odd front in nature. I think you're going to start to see a slight trend back towards tight end bodies and 21 personnel and tight end wing sets, compressed sets. That's just my gut feeling. Again, didn't get a chance to watch a ton or see a ton of offensive guys in the spring. But, I'd be interested when you start getting a lot of these spring games on TV, when ESPN starts covering some of these spring games, interested to see what the college guys are doing. And, where you always, as a defensive guy, you got to try and stay either up to or see if you can stay slightly ahead of the curve with what offenses are doing. Because if you get behind the eight ball, it makes it really tough to adjust. But, hopefully, hopefully we can adapt and we can adjust to whatever's out there. So we know we've got to work more against bigger body stuff. We've got to have another package outside of our, tight Okie 3 high stuff. We know we need another package, and that's currently what I'm working on right now is what is that package? If it's 4 down, what coverages can we carry? How much can we get in to think that our kids from the 3 high world can pattern match the way we need to pattern match? And then when we go 4 down, thinking we're going to be able to carry all these other things at some point, the rubber meets the road and you can't do it all. So that's going to be part of our spring as well, carrying what's our change up front, and do we need to play a certain coverage with that change up front to make it easier on the kids and easier on the coaches so that we can spend all the time we want to spend in our tight 3 high stuff, making sure those run fits and those pattern matches are where we need them to be in our base defensive system. So, just some of the things that we've got going on. I think this summer in my area, I'm going to try and do a couple play fast camps. One of the things that came up is some of our younger guys were asking myself and our head coach about camps that they can go to. And, when you think of the world of football nowadays, there's not a lot of great instructional camps out there. A lot of the college camps are just for recruiting purposes. A lot of one-day stuff. There's still a few old school team camps out there, but, positionally speaking, to go to camp and get better playing a position, there's really not a lot of great stuff out there. So I think, I'm going to try and use this platform and my coaching experience and the facility that we have to put together, hopefully this summer, get a couple, play fast positional camps, trying to figure out what age groups I want to do. The elephant in the room for me at a private school is if I do high school age kids, I'm going to have to invite, which I would want to do anyways, because of this platform. I'm going to have to invite coaches from other schools to be there to coach positions so that they can see that it's strictly an instructional camp, to get kids better at the game of football, right? We love the game of football. We love helping coaches. We love helping kids play. So, we're at a private school, and the way high school football is in general, even if I was at a public school, I would do it the same way because, it's just, you don't want it out there that people think that you're running a camp to evaluate talent and get kids to your school. That's 100% the opposite, or 360 degrees or 180 degrees, however you want to look at it. I guess 360 would be full circle facing the same way. So 180 degrees the other direction for me, is recruiting players and evaluating talent, even at a private school. I don't get involved in any of that. I don't believe in it in high school. I want to coach who shows up. So I want to do some play fast positional camps, get some skill camps going, offense and defense. I think we do a really good job throwing the ball, really good job coaching quarterbacks. We have some really good quarterback coaches in this area, some really good line coaches that I like. So that's one of the things I want to do. Last couple days on Twitter, some people have been throwing out there, are we going to get another play fast clinic going? I've talked about this a million times. The venue we had is the one I want. If I can't get that venue, I don't know if I want to do another one. But there's kind of a buzz building again about the play fast clinic. So I think at some point I'm going to have to get that, off the ground and running. So I think I'm going to focus on summertime doing some play fast camps. And then I think maybe I'll try and get the ball rolling for the future to get some play fast clinics going. I always wanted to bring the play fast clinic to some other states where we have a lot of representation. So the easiest one for me would be to try and do a clinic in New York, because I still have a lot of friends and a lot of feet on the ground in New York that could probably help me book a hotel and, help me get the word out to people. So, but the great thing about YouTube and the great thing about the play fast community is it's kind of national. So, I have feet on the ground everywhere that could probably help me out. So I talked about it 2 years ago when we did our clinic. Arizona was one of the places that came up with a bunch of guys from Arizona that were at the clinic, and they said they would love to have a play fast clinic in Arizona. So, just some of those things on the horizon, right? Still trying to find ways to make the brand better, trying to figure out ways that we can make play fast better, things that we can do differently. I'm still interested in starting a podcast. I've been talking about that for a while. At some point, I've got to actually put it all together and figure out what I want to do. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy interviewing people. I enjoy talking about things outside of football. So a lot of things going on. Spring football coming up. Trying to crank some videos out for Patreon and YouTube. So appreciate all you guys being here tonight. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks for following along. Thanks for tuning into what we're doing with PlayFast. Make sure you check out some of the brands that help sponsor us with what we're doing. Obviously, Dome Hats, right? This is my PlayFast Dome hat. They do a great job with sports programs, small businesses, branding, merchandise, doing it a little bit different, kind of custom, getting away from stock hats. As we say, stock hats suck. So GameStrat, Sideline Replay Company we use, Difference USA, the striking machine that we use. Locally, Baker Sporting Goods is the company that we use for our uniforms. And don't text me at 6 a.m. I'm going to be on the field. Baker for us locally is a company we use for uniforms and coaches gear and spirit packs and stuff. I'm also working with a company in Wisconsin, Brand Tech, just came on board with PlayFast. So Brand Tech does a lot of different things. They've got some apparel stuff that they do. They're making custom PlayFast sneakers and custom batting cage jackets. But they also have fundraising platforms. They work with Q Collar. They have a sports drink, a kind of a halftime drink or a post-workout drink called Fizz. The fundraising platform called Change Up. They've got a disinfectant microbial spray for uniforms, for staph infection, for locker rooms, for weight rooms. So just a lot of different things that Brand Tech's doing out of Wisconsin. So check them out. Fly Route Drones, just picked them up a couple weeks ago. We use 2 drones for everything we do. I think everybody should use a drone. If it's not legal for games, you should certainly be using drones for 7-on-7 in practice. So excited to be working with Fly Route, Aaron Consulting, Dan Fadracy and his group at Aaron Consulting, working on educating families and coaches on the recruiting process and talking about, NCAA timelines, NCAA guidelines, all that good stuff. So, just the 7 companies that we work with, if you could check them out, they help PlayFast. They support us, so we need to support them. So appreciate everything you guys do. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for asking some questions. Joe, I will talk to you tomorrow morning at 7 or 7:30. If you want to text me at 5:15 on my way to work, we can talk then. I'm sure you'll be up working out in the weight room. That's what old people do. So I'll talk to you sometime during the day tomorrow. Everybody else, thanks for being here. Look for a couple videos that are coming out in the future. If you have any ideas for videos, topics, anything you want to see, as always, get in touch with me and I'll see what we can do. All right. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for all you do. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast. See you next time.